The minutes seemed to stretch into an eternity, each tick of the station clock a slow, deliberate beat against Harvey's mounting impatience. He had arrived at the bustling Grand Central Station far too early for his afternoon train to Asheville, a futile attempt to outrun the knot of anxiety that had been tightening in his chest all week. He had already nursed 2 lukewarm coffees from a hurried stand, paced the grand concourse until his feet ached, and idly browsed the magazine racks of a small newsstand, but nothing truly settled his restless energy. Finally, giving in to the dull ache in his knees, he found a spot on a polished oak bench in the sprawling waiting area. As a habit, or perhaps a desperate attempt to feel in control, he unzipped his leather messenger bag, a weathered piece he'd carried since his college days, and began a routine message of its contents. And then his breath hitched. The most crucial item was missing, a sleek ebony folder containing the final, vital documents for his big presentation. Harvey frantically rummaged through the bag, the soft lining of its compartments now feeling like a mocking void. He checked each zippered pocket, each divider, his fingers brushing against notebooks, pens and his tablet, but the portfolio was nowhere to be found. He sprang up as if jolted by an electric current, his gaze darting to the enormous clock hanging above the concourse. A low groan escaped him. 30 minutes until his train. Just 30 minutes. Moments ago, those 30 minutes had felt like an insurmountable year, a vast expanse of time. Now they'd shrunk to a terrifying fraction of a second. He slung the bag over his shoulder and burst out of the station doors onto the frenetic city street, nearly colliding with a petite young woman struggling with an oversized olive-green suitcase. The young man trailing behind her, likely a friend or a helpful stranger, mumbled a gruff, "Which way you going, buddy?" But Harvey barely registered the retort. To hell with the kid, he thought, his mind racing. He had to think, had to conjure a solution for the missing portfolio, and fast. A taxi? No. A trip back to his downtown apartment and then back to the station was impossible. The distance was too great, and the city's notorious rush-hour traffic would swallow any hope of making it in time. His spirits plummeted like a stone in water. He was reaching into his pocket for his phone, intending to call his assistant and beg her to reschedule the critical meeting, when his hand froze. Just then, a sunny yellow taxi pulled up curbside a few yards away. The passenger door opened, and his fiancée, Clara, emerged, a radiant smile on her face, and clutched in her hand, as if it were a precious treasure, was his black leather portfolio. Harvey exhaled a long, shaky breath, the tension that had held him captive for minutes finally dissolving. He was saved. "I came to see you off, and to bring you this," Clara beamed, her eyes sparkling like newly polished emeralds, as she gracefully extricated herself from his relieved embrace. "I saw it lounging on the sofa, tucked behind a throw pillow. Here, you big scatterbrain." "You saved me," Harvey admitted, a genuine laugh escaping him as he quickly tucked the portfolio deep into his messenger bag. "I was just about to call and beg them to postpone the whole meeting." "Well, see, it all worked out," Clara said with a dismissive wave of her hand, her infectious optimism a balm to his frayed nerves. "Come on, let's go back inside and find a quiet spot. Sit for a bit before you head out." They re-entered the cool, echoing vastness of the station, navigating through the ebb and flow of travellers. Near the ticket counters, a surging crowd jostled impatiently. Someone bellowed for the cashier to speed things up, while others frantically fumbled for their wallets and travel documents. Harvey bought another round of coffees, and as he and Clara chatted about their week, his gaze drifted around the bustling environment. His eyes landed on a small girl seemingly materialised from thin air, sitting quietly near a less trafficked side entrance. At her feet lay an upturned shoebox, its humble opening inviting contributions. Occasionally a passer-by would pause, dropping a few coins or a crumpled bill into the box. The little girl, no older than 7 or 8, would offer a profound silent thank you, bowing her head and pressing her tiny hands together in a gesture of prayer. When a uniformed security guard strolled by, her eyes, quick and wary, would track him, and she'd seamlessly shift to a new, less conspicuous spot, resuming her silent vigil. The child piqued Harvey's curiosity. Her dark, lank hair was pulled into 2 thin, almost childlike braids. She wore a lightweight jacket, clearly several sizes too large and noticeably worn, its fabric faded from countless washes. Waiting until Clara had finished her coffee, Harvey gathered both empty cups and walked toward a nearby waste bin, conveniently located near where the little girl was currently seated. "Hi there," he greeted, stopping beside her. "What are you doing here, all by yourself?" The girl flinched, her small shoulders rising in a startled jump, and she looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. But as she assessed him, realizing he was just another weary traveller, and not a security guard or a police officer, a flicker of defiance crossed her face. Her lips twisted into a mockingly cynical smirk. "Can't you read?" she asked, her voice surprisingly steady for such a young child, as she pointed to a crudely scrawled cardboard sign propped up in her shoebox. In messy block capitals it declared, "For Mummy's medical bills." Harvey, recalling countless sensationalized news reports about organized rings exploiting child beggars, felt a wave of skepticism wash over him. He eyed the girl critically, then subtly scanned his surroundings. Surely someone was nearby watching her, pulling the strings. But no matter how hard he looked, he saw no one suspicious, no lurking figure in the shadows. "What's wrong with your mummy?" he asked, his voice softening, despite his reservations. The girl's gaze dropped to her worn sneakers and she sniffled. "She's sick. Her heart's real bad." A sudden pang of shame pierced Harvey. The child wasn't lying. As she spoke about her mother, her bright little face clouded over. Her lips trembled nervously and a shimmer of tears welled in her eyes. "How much money do you need to help her?" he asked, his voice gentle. "A lot?" "A lot," the girl echoed, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know exactly how much, but if everyone who walked by just gave $1, I'd have enough by now. Not many people give." Harvey glanced into the shoebox and grimly agreed. A few crumpled bills, mostly ones, lay scattered among a handful of loose change. He doubted it amounted to $20, if that. "What's your name, sweetie?" he asked, his tone now genuinely concerned. "Are you from around here?"
"Jasmine," she answered instantly, her eyes meeting his. Harvey felt 100 questions bubbling up. Does Jasmine go to school? What is her mum's name? But the crackling announcement from the overhead speaker cut him short. "All passengers for train 417 to Asheville, now boarding at Gate C, track 5. He jolted, the urgency of physical push. "Here," Harvey said, his voice a bit rushed, pressing several crisp $100 bills into the shoebox. "This is for your mum, and for you. Get yourself something warm to eat, and well, goodbye, Jasmine. I wish you all the very best." Without waiting for a thank you, without even a backward glance, he quickly strode towards the main exit, where Clara waited, a beacon of calm in the swirling chaos of the station. Jasmine, her small eyes tracking his retreating figure, carefully gathered her shoebox and, to Harvey's unwitting surprise, began to follow, melting into the stream of departing travellers. "I'll be back in just 3 days," Harvey promised, pressing a tender kiss to Clara's forehead. "I'll finalise the deal, sign all the paperwork, visit my old college roommate, and then I'm straight home. Meanwhile, you can start looking at venues for the wedding. Maybe get some quotes, put together a preliminary budget. I'm expecting a full report, mind you." Clara laughed, a light, melodious sound that always soothed him. She reached up, her fingers deftly straightening the collar of his crisp blue shirt. "Oh, you are just so demanding, aren't you? Dumping all the planning on me and acting delighted about it. And it's always like this. Why do I even love you?" "I love you too," Harvey said, his voice genuinely serious, as he hoisted his messenger bag higher on his shoulder. "All right, time to go." He gave his fiancée one last lingering kiss, a silent promise, before turning and making his way toward the edge of the platform, pulling out his train ticket as he walked. Unexpectedly, a small figure darted from the throng of passengers rushing toward him. "Mister!" a familiar childlike voice chirped from somewhere near his knees. "Mister, you really need this train." Harvey looked down, surprised to see Jasmine tugging insistently on the hem of his tweed jacket. "Listen, I'm really in a hurry, sweetie," he said softly, trying to sidestep her. "My train's about to leave. I absolutely can't miss it." Mister! Jasmine persisted, clutching her shoebox to her chest, her small face earnest. "You have to come with me, to my mummy." "Jasmine, what is it you want?" Harvey finally asked, a flicker of exasperation in his tone. "I already gave you money. Is it not enough? Here, I can give you more." He reached into his wallet, but before he could pull out another bill, the girl pointed a trembling finger toward the newly arrived train on the opposite track. Harvey froze, his gaze following her. Stepping out of a coach car, her head bent slightly, was a woman. "Mummy! Mummy's here!" Jasmine shrieked, a joyous, relieved smile spreading across her face, only to be quickly replaced by a look of dismay. "Oh no, I'm going to be in trouble now." Harvey, oblivious to Jasmine's sudden anxiety and his own slowly departing train, stood rooted to the spot. He watched as the slightly stooped figure of a woman in a well-worn, old-fashioned navy blue coat scanned the platform, her eyes frantically searching for her daughter. Harvey knew her even before he saw her face. He remembered her soft, almost cat-like gait, the way her short chestnut-brown hair framed her face, and the graceful, fluid movements of her hands as she walked. All of it, the essence of her, he had long considered irretrievably lost, almost forgotten, erased from the canvas of his memory, and now, in this impossibly real moment, she stood before him, just as she had so many, many years ago. "Maria!" he whispered, a strangled half-sound, as if fearing to startle this unexpected vision. "Maria, is that really you?" The woman, somehow hearing Harvey's voice through the roar of the departing train and the din of the crowd, turned her head toward him, stopping dead in her tracks, her eyes wide with disbelief. Harvey's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat. A misty haze blurred his vision. Standing before him, barely 10 yards away, was his long-lost younger sister. A sister he had never hoped to see alive again. And Jasmine, the small girl with the funny braids, was his niece. Harvey and Maria had been late-in-life children. They appeared in the humble home of a plumber and a schoolteacher when their parents were already nearing 40. Harvey, the firstborn, was a quiet, studious boy. His mother, Helen, hadn't planned on more children after him, but fate, as it often does, had a different plan. A year and a half later, they welcomed another addition. This time Helen presented her husband Arthur with a daughter, whom Arthur, in his joy, named Maria. Despite the fact that Harvey and Maria were constantly together and shared everything they owned, they were absolute opposites. Harvey grew up introverted, with few friends, preferring the company of textbooks and weighty informative books. He would retreat with them into the cramped pantry, reading for hours, listening to the muffled throb of music coming from the shared bedroom he had with his sister. Maria, on the other hand, thrived on noise, on commotion. They were her constant companions. Numerous friends would stream into her room, and a little later her first crushes appeared. First one, then another, then a third. Maria changed them like perfumes, never truly attaching herself to anyone, treating the affections of her admirers as lightly as the fleeting romances in her teenage magazines. Harvey grew up convinced their parents loved her more than they loved him, despite him being the firstborn, and with each passing day his resentment toward Maria festered, growing deeper and more bitter. He'd respond to her brusquely, hiding her favourite scarf, or was rude when her friends filled their small living room with laughter. It took immense effort for Harvey to coax even a few dollars in pocket money from his parents, while Helen and Arthur seemed to hand money to Maria freely, no matter what whim or expense she asked for. All of it stung Harvey deeply, stoking the embers of his silent resentment into a simmering blaze. He carried the unfairness close to his heart, patiently biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash it. Plans for revenge, dark and delicious, formed one after another in his young mind. He had to wait a long time, until Maria's 17th birthday. It all happened on that fateful spring evening, the night she turned 16. Later in life, Harvey would often recall that day with a heavy ache of regret, yearning for a magical rewind button, a chance to somehow undo the devastating damage he had wrought. Days before the celebration, he'd stolen a significant sum of money from his parents, their painstakingly saved nest egg for his own college studying, and expertly framed Maria for the theft. He held all the cards. On her birthday, Maria had stumbled home, flushing and giggling, undeniably having had a bit too much to drink. This immediately ignited her father's temper. "We waited for you all evening," he thundered, meeting his barely standing daughter at the front door. "Where did you get so plastered?" "Just a little gathering with friends, Dad," Maria shrugged carelessly, oblivious in her youthful exuberance. "We just celebrated and, relaxed. I'm sleepy." "And on whose dime did you do all this relaxing?" Arthur narrowed his eyes, his gaze sharp and suspicious. "You didn't ask for any money. Whose party was it exactly?" "Yours, Dad, all yours," Harvey interjected smoothly, as if passing by a wolf in sheep's clothing. "You might want to check your secret stash, too." Arthur, a surge of dread coursing through him, dashed into the living room. He yanked the worn leather satchel where he and Helen kept their savings from its hiding place in the old mahogany armoire and peered inside. It was empty. The colour drained from his face. Victor hurled the empty satchel at the wall, the dull thud echoing the sudden silence in the room, and slowly rose, his massive fists clenching at his sides. "And look what I found in her makeup bag tonight," Harvey continued, his voice a steady poison, producing the planted evidence. "It was just lying under the table. I picked it up and peeked inside. There was still a little bit left." He extended a small floral-patterned makeup pouch to his father,
Inside, nestling among lipsticks and eyeshadows, were several crisp banknotes. Arthur snatched the pouch from his son's hand and flung it at Maria's feet. "Papa, this isn't true!" Maria shrieked, instantly sobered, her eyes wide with terror and disbelief. "He's lying! He hates me! I didn't take any money! Am I a thief?" She stooped, picked up the wretched pouch, pulled out the incriminating money and placed it on a nearby end table, as if it burned her fingers. "What were you doing in my half of the room?" Maria screamed at her brother, pure fury contorting her face. "I told you to stay out, didn't I, you snake?" She lunged at Harvey, her small fists flailing against his chest, and Harvey, instead of pushing his sister away, bore her frantic blows with a chilling, triumphant smile. "What's all this commotion?" Helen asked, emerging from the bedroom, her face etched with sleepiness and concern. "You'll wake the whole house. Is there a war going on?" "Here, Helen, just look," Arthur snarled, his voice laced with venom, pointing a trembling finger at his daughter. "We've raised a drunkard and a thief, siphoned off our money and went out to a party, and she has the audacity to deny it. No shame, no conscience." "But I didn't take your money," Maria cried, tears streaming down her face. She'd never known such searing pain in her young life, before or since. It was all Harvey. "Either you apologise for what you've done," Arthur declared, his voice like cold steel, utterly unyielding, "or you walk out of my house. Do you understand me?" Maria, tears smearing trails down her cheeks, met her father's gaze with defiant eyes. "I didn't take your money," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper, but firm. She zipped up her lightweight jacket, a small act of self-preservation. "To hell with all of you!" And with a sharp turn on her heel, the girl snatched up her worn sneakers and ran barefoot out of the apartment, the door slamming shut behind her with a desolate finality. "Wasn't that a bit harsh?" Helen asked, her voice trembling, once the door had closed on their daughter's desperate exit. "Maybe we should have been softer, waited until morning, talked it through then. What if she does something terrible to herself now?" "Nothing will happen to her," Arthur waved his hand dismissively, the anger still boiling beneath his skin. "She'll just spend the night at a friend's, and she'll be thrilled about it. We'll talk tomorrow, that's for sure. We'll talk in a way that she won't be able to sit down for a week. I'll give her a beating she won't forget." At that moment, as Arthur uttered those harsh words, he couldn't have known that he would never see his daughter again. She didn't return, not the next day, nor the day after, nor a week later. The search dragged on for months, then years, a slow, agonizing slide into despair, until she was finally declared a missing person. The crushing weight of her disappearance fell squarely on her parents, who blamed themselves for their unforgiving words. Arthur, unable to reconcile with the loss of his daughter, succumbed to a deep, debilitating alcoholism and passed away a few years later, his heart broken. Helen had outlived Arthur by only a few years. Harvey was left utterly alone, drowning in a sea of hard-won, deserved guilt. And now, after all these years, fate seemed to be offering him an unexpected lifeline, a fragile second chance. "I went straight to New York City back then," Maria recalled, her voice soft, almost ethereal, as she sat across from her brother in the cramped, cosy kitchen of her small apartment. The aroma of stale coffee and something faintly sweet, like forgotten pastries, hung in the air. "It was terrifying, Harvey, absolutely terrifying. But the hurt, the raw anger, it just wouldn't let me turn back, wouldn't let me go home." She looked out the small window, her gaze distant, fixed on a solitary oak tree, shedding its autumn leaves in the small park across the street. I got incredibly lucky, though. On the subway, I met an elderly woman, a retired librarian named Mrs. Eleanor Vance. She was such a kind soul, truly good. She offered me a job as her live-in companion. She lived alone in a charming old brownstone, so I kept things tidy for her. Mrs. Vance told everyone I was a distant relative, a niece from out of state who had come to the city for college and was staying with her. It turned out she had run away from her own parents when they tried to force her into an arranged marriage in her youth. So she understood perfectly, you know. She really understood. Maria paused, a wistful smile touching her lips. And then I met David. We fell in love, got married. He passed away 2 years ago, almost right after we moved here to Green Valley. He wanted us to go back to my hometown, wanted me to reconcile with Mum and Dad, but I just couldn't, not then. So we settled here, and our daughter Jasmine was born. Everything was good, everything was ordinary, until David got hit by a drunk driver in a crosswalk. He was just taking an evening stroll, minding his own business. I've been alone ever since. Well, until I met you today. She looked at her brother with such an intense, searching gaze that Harvey unconsciously flinched, as if touched by an invisible hand. I thought you had died, Harvey sighed, staring into his coffee cup, the dark liquid reflecting the weight of his unspoken regret. I mean, anything could have happened. Mum and Dad, they died from the uncertainty, from the not knowing. They waited for you every single day, Maria. They even consulted all sorts of psychics and mediums, just desperate to know if you were alive or not. And if you were, where? How you were living. And it was all my fault. All of it. Though I never confessed. And now there's no one left to confess to. Harvey fell silent, dropping his head, the truth a bitter ash on his tongue. Somewhere in the distance, the mournful blare of a train whistle pierced the quiet, a long drawn-out cry like the desolate bellow of a lone bull. He'd completely forgotten about his critically important business meeting, the one that promised a huge profit, a new chapter in his life. Right now, he was utterly submerged in the past, consumed only by the desperate need to ask for forgiveness. He knew, with a certainty that both pained and humbled him, that Maria might never truly forgive him. But he had to at least try. This was what he had longed for, what he had dreamed of for all these desolate years. You probably think I'm still angry at you, don't you? Maria asked, as if plucking the very thought from his mind. I forgave everyone a long time ago, you and Dad and Mum, even though she really had nothing to do with it, of course. She could have stood up for me back then, but she didn't want to, I guess. Didn't want to cross Dad. A quiet, heartbreaking sigh escaped her. A few years ago, David and I came back. We visited Grandma and Grandpa's graves in the old cemetery, and there I saw Mum and Dad's headstones. Only then, standing over their graves, was I truly able to forgive. I couldn't do it while they were alive. But why did you forgive me? Harvey asked, genuinely surprised, his gaze fixed on her. I'm still alive. Because I have one foot in the grave myself, Harvey, Maria said, her voice stark, her gesture indicating a small, cluttered shelf above the sink, overflowing with prescription bottles. She sighed heavily. My heart needs immediate surgery, a valve replacement, and there's no money for the operation. They can do it for free, of course, through the public hospital system, but there's a 3-year waiting list. I don't think I have that much time. Her eyes, full of a quiet desperation, met his. Listen, since you're here, can I ask you something? Of course, Harvey agreed instantly, his heart lurching. Ask anything. Look after Jasmine when I'm gone, Maria said, her voice barely a whisper, her gaze drifting to the window where her daughter played in a small sandbox below. She's a smart girl. She understands everything. She'll be in 2nd grade this fall. Just a little wild, a bit of a wanderer. She's always running away from home, you know. She'll hop on a bus or sneak onto a train, somehow, and make her way into the city. They've caught her at the station a few times begging. I wanted to punish her for it, but when I found out she was doing it for me, I just cried all evening." Her voice broke, choked with raw emotion. "Because, besides my daughter, I have no one." "Do you have children?" Maria then asked, her eyes searching his. "No," Harvey said, a faint, tender smile touching his lips. "Clara and I are getting married soon, and after that we'll see. But don't worry about Jasmine. I have a feeling she's going to like it with me." The old grandfather clock in the living room chimed 6 times. The last bus to the city departed in an hour, and Harvey could still make it. As he said goodbye to his sister, he left her his phone number, his address, and a heartfelt plea. "Don't disappear again, Maria." "This isn't just a coincidence," he added, his voice firm, full of conviction. "What's not a coincidence?" Maria asked, perplexed. "All of this," Harvey insisted, pulling her into a tight, desperate embrace. "Our meeting, this moment, it's another chance. And don't worry about the surgery, Maria. Don't bury yourself before your time." He held her for a long moment, then released her and stepped out of her apartment, leaving behind the warmth of her small kitchen for the crisp evening air. A profound warmth spread through Harvey's chest, a sense of lightness and freedom he hadn't felt since his distant childhood, a time before worries, before obligations, before the gnawing anxieties of adulthood. He practically floated down the worn concrete steps, pushing open the heavy apartment building door, and paused beside the small communal sandbox. "Uncle Harvey, are you Mummy's friend?" Jasmine suddenly piped up, her voice curious and bright. "Better than a friend," he chuckled, crouching down beside her. "I'm her brother." Jasmine's eyes widened, then lit up. "So you're my uncle," she gasped, her face splitting into a wide grin. "That's awesome." Harvey nodded, a genuine smile easing the lines around his eyes. He picked up a stray twig and carefully poked it into the sandcastle Jasmine had meticulously sculpted. "Yes, I'm happy too, sweetheart. Listen, how would you feel about coming to stay with me for a bit?" He saw her face light up further. "My place is nice. I have 2 fluffy cats, and Aunt Clara would be thrilled to meet you." Jasmine's brow furrowed, a tiny wrinkle of concern. "What about Mummy?" she asked, her gaze sharpening. "Is she coming with us?" "She'll join us a little later," Harvey replied gently, a subtle ache in his heart. "She's just a bit busy right now." He didn't want to alarm her with the full truth just yet. "So what do you say? Ready to go? This bus won't wait for us. Your mum agreed to this trip." Jasmine extended a small, sand-smudged palm toward him, and Harvey carefully took her hand, his fingers dwarfing hers. Before they set off, both Jasmine and Harvey instinctively turned back, looking up at the windows of the apartment. Maria stood on the other side of the glass, waving a hesitant goodbye, a quiet understanding passing between siblings. "You're home early, darling?" Clara exclaimed, her voice laced with surprise as she opened the front door to find Harvey standing there, a small girl clutching his hand. "And who is this precious one?" "You won't believe it." Harvey grinned, stepping aside to let Jasmine enter first, his voice brimming with barely contained excitement. "The most incredible thing happened today. It was nothing short of a miracle." "I can see that," Clara chuckled, her eyes sparkling with amusement, as she helped Jasmine unbutton her little jacket. "What's your name, little miracle?" "Jasmine," the girl chirped, her eyes dancing mischievously. "And are you Aunt Clara?" "That's me," Clara affirmed warmly. All right, let's get those hands washed and then we'll find you something delicious to eat. She watched the girls skip off towards the kitchen, then turned her gaze back to Harvey, a more serious question in her eyes. So, did you get the contract, honey? Contract? Oh no, not at all. Harvey waved his hand dismissively, the memory of the missed meeting already fading. I told you a miracle happened. I found my sister Clara. Can you believe it? And this is her daughter Jasmine. Maria, my sister I mean, asked me to look after Jasmine for a while. So, of course, I said yes. You don't mind if she stays with us, do you? Mind? Of course not, Clara sighed, bending to retrieve his slippers from beside the shoe rack. Her brow, however, was still a little furrowed. But what about the contract, Harvey? You were so set on signing it, and they were offering such a good deal for the paper supplies. Now what? Your printing business is barely breaking even as it is, and who knows how much longer it can hold out. It'll hold, Harvey stated firmly, his voice laced with a newfound conviction. We'll find another buyer. I still have a couple of other leads. Something will work out. But what I gained today, what I found today, you can't buy that with any amount of money. He smiled a deep, contented smile. Come on, let's have dinner. I have so much to tell you. He gently wrapped an arm around Clara's waist, pulling her closer, his mind already spinning with the best way to begin his incredible tale. It was a warm, gentle September afternoon, outside the Grand Bistro, one of the city's most elegant restaurants. A flurry of cars decorated with balloons and streamers lined the curb. Festively dressed guests milled around, glancing at their watches with eager anticipation. Some chatted quietly, others discreetly checked their flowers and gifts. Finally, a pristine white limousine rounded the corner, drawing a collective sigh of relief from the waiting crowd. Harvey took Clara's hand, helping her gracefully out of the limousine, and walking toward them, hand in hand, were Maria and Jasmine, Maria holding a small ribbon-tied gift box. Everything all right? Harvey asked, accepting the thoughtful present. Yes, thank you, Maria replied, her eyes soft with gratitude. Thank you for everything, Harvey, for the surgery, for the rehabilitation, and for Jasmine. No, thank you, Harvey countered, his gaze lowering in humility. You gave me back so much more. Well, Maria beamed, her eyes sparkling. Shall we go celebrate? Let's. His sister and niece chimed in unison, their voices echoing the joyous harmony that now filled his life.